Welcome to GameCube Gallery, episode number 14. In GameCube Gallery, we are taking a look at the GameCube library, one game at a time. In the previous episode of GameCube Gallery, we took a look at Dragon's Lair 3D. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at a very unique game, and that game is Geist. So, let's get into it. Before we get into today's video, I wanted to quickly tell you about a Kickstarter for a movie I will be heavily involved in if it is successfully funded. The movie is called Reset, and it is a feature-length science fiction film about transitioning into adulthood in near-future New York City, and it was written and will be directed by a large YouTuber named James Tyler, who you all may know by his YouTube channel Nerdstalgic. Tyler has a background in filmmaking, and this film is his dream, and he will be hiring a professional crew for the production of the movie. Now, there are many different pledge levels for you to back to support the movie, and there are a variety of rewards you will receive depending on your pledge, most of which include a copy of the movie upon release. So this is essentially a pre-order for the movie that will also help make it happen. Now, I believe in Tyler, aka Nerdstalgic, and his project, and I encourage you to go check out the Kickstarter, and if it looks interesting to you, please consider backing it, and if you back it, please share the Kickstarter on social media and with friends and family. I will leave a link to the Kickstarter and Tyler's YouTube channel Nerdstalgic in the description down below, so please go check those out. Let's make this movie happen, everybody. Thank you. Now back to the video. Geist is a first-party, first-person shooter with a twist. Developed by InSpace and Nintendo and published by Nintendo in 2005 on the Nintendo GameCube. In Geist, you take on the role of a scientist named John Ramey with his friend Thomas Bryson and a team of soldiers as they investigate the Volks Corporation. Thomas Bryson is an undercover agent in the corporation. The mission goes horribly wrong and Ramey is captured, and the leader of the corporation, Alexander Volks, has Ramey's soul removed from his body as Volks tries to turn him into a spectral soldier for Project Z. Just as this is going down, you are rescued by Gigi, who is a spirit, and she teaches Ramey how to use his new ghostly powers as he sets out to save his friend Bryson, regain his body, and stop Volks' Project Z. The story overall is okay, but nothing super deep or complex. I enjoyed it for what it was, and there were some nice plot twists along the way, like finding out who Gigi is, what led to the Volks Corporation to harness this power, why Volks is doing what he's doing, and what his ultimate plan is. The story is mainly there to serve as a vehicle for the unique gameplay, which we're going to talk about here in just a bit. The graphics are pretty good with some decent details and textures to the environments and character models. While you are in ghost form, the world takes on a different, more muted color palette, which is a nice touch and helps make being the ghost more immersive. I like the weapon models and animations quite a bit, but the character animations are a bit odd at times, especially when they die. When they die, they go all ragdoll on you, which sometimes can result in some hilarious effects, but for a first-party Nintendo game, I would have expected better, but it's not a big deal. I actually found the ragdoll effects to be pretty damn entertaining. The sound design is fine, with the guns and overall atmospheric sounds being pretty decent, but the enemies do a lot of strange grunting noises when you shoot them, and it's a bit odd, but again, it's pretty damn entertaining. The music is pretty decent, although I would have liked to have heard more variety. The music is epic when it needs to be, and slow and mysterious when it needs to be, so at least it matches the tone and pace of each level. Here, have a listen. Story, graphics, music, and sound are all decent, but that is not where Geist truly shines and sets itself apart from the competition. Where Geist really sets itself apart and stands on its own is with its very unique and original gameplay mechanics. Now, I've never played a game like Geist before, and I probably won't play a game like it in quite some time because it is such a unique game in true Nintendo fashion, and it puts a really nice spin on the genre. As I stated earlier, in Geist you have had your spirit pulled from your body, so essentially you are a ghost, and that plays heavily into the gameplay. The game is divided into 13 levels, each divided into a number of stages which serve as checkpoints. Each level has you navigating the environments to complete objectives which range anything from protect this person to possess this person or destroy this thing, so on and so forth. Each level contains two types of collectibles to find, being host collectibles, which you can only collect while in a possessed host, and ghost collectibles, which you can only collect while in ghostly form. As you collect these, you will unlock new levels and characters to use in multiplayer. Now, even though Geist is a first-person shooter, it feels more like a puzzle adventure game than a shooter. But don't worry, there's still plenty of action to be had in the game, especially in the late game. As the ghost, you are invisible to anything living. When you are in ghost form, time moves very slowly around you, enabling you to really take your time and plan your next move. However, while you're in ghost form, your spiritual life force is constantly depleting, and you can replenish it by either sucking the life out of plants or possessing something. If that life force runs out, your ghostly form will be pulled into the afterlife and you will lose the level. While in ghost form, you can also hover for a brief period of time, move through slips and cracks, and of course possess both objects, people, and animals. And this is where the puzzle aspect comes into play. Oftentimes in a level, you can't get very far in ghost form because you cannot pass through solid objects like doors, and you cannot physically interact with the environment. So this leads you to have to possess people in order to not only navigate the environment physically, but also to engage in combat with your enemies, being both human and the creatures that have escaped from the rift that Volks opened up. But you can't just float over to any human or animal and possess them. Most of them will have a gray energy surrounding them that means that they're not scared enough to possess. And this is where object possession comes into play. In order to scare the humans enough to possess them, you first have to possess objects around them to scare them in various ways. This requires you to pay very close attention to your environment to identify what objects you can possess and what they do. Scare a human or animal enough and they will begin to glow yellow, which means they're close to being able to possess. Scare them even more and they will glow red, which means you can now possess them. To illustrate this process, let me go over one of my favorite moments in the game. There is a section in a later level where you and Bryson need to get some guards out of the way in a cafeteria, but there are no hosts you can scare with a weapon so that you can kill the guards. Bryson suggests taking control of the chef and either feeding them to get them out of the way temporarily or to poison their food to kill them. So you examine the chef while he is cooking and you find 3 objects you can possess. A fan on the wall, a stack of plates, and an oven. You possess the oven and raise the temperature super high to burn the food. You then possess the fan to blow the burnt food smell towards the chef, causing him to investigate the oven. You then possess the stack of plates and fling plates at him until he is scared enough to possess. Once you possess the chef, you find some soup mix and you can either go ahead and make the soup for the guards to temporarily distract him, or you can poison the soup and kill them. But where do you get the poison? Well, earlier in the level you possess a rat, and that rat shows a fear of rat traps and a can of rat poison. So you backtrack to the room with the rat poison, grab it, and then you can poison the guards. There's so many really fun and interesting moments like this in Geist, and each one is just an absolute blast to play and figure out. It is like a puzzle trying to figure out who you need to possess in order to progress and how to scare them enough to possess them, and these puzzles are quite clever and sometimes hard to figure out. Now, besides using the possessed hosts to navigate the levels and complete your objectives, you will also use them to fight other humans and non-human enemies, and this is where the game starts to suffer a bit. The first-person shooter controls are not that great. They're a bit stiff and it's hard to aim sometimes, but eventually you get adjusted to it. Now, in Geist's defense, most first-person shooter games from this era controlled similar to this, so it was really just a product of the times. You better get used to the first-person shooter controls quick because the game throws more and more action and gunfights your way as you progress further into the story. Now, if your host dies, most of the time you'll simply be ejected from their body back to your ghostly form, unless it's a host that's necessary to beat the level. If that host dies, you lose the level. There are several boss fights in the game, but to be honest, they were all pretty generic and boring besides a few exceptions, like one boss where you have to make him drop his grenades and then possess them and blow them up. and the final 3 boss fights were actually pretty fun and epic. But other than that, the rest of the boss fights were pretty forgettable and super easy. Now outside of possession, exploration, puzzle solving, and combat, there are some cool moments like a level where you possess Bryson's motorcycle and try to protect him, and you have to unpossess the motorcycle to possess a truck with mounted machine guns to gun down his pursuers. Possessing animals is fun as well. You get to possess dogs, rats, and even bats at one point, which added some interesting gameplay variety. There's also multiplayer for up to 4 players, and there are 3 different modes, being Possession Deathmatch, Capture the Host, and Hunt. I sadly did not get to try the multiplayer, because of a certain pandemic, but I've read that they're quite fun and I will certainly try them and report back at some point. Geist takes around 9 to 10 hours to complete the single player campaign, which I feel is pretty replayable so that you can try to approach certain scenarios in different ways. The current and only speedrun for Geist is 1 hour and 34 minutes, which is pretty damn impressive. To sum up, Geist is a very average game in many ways. The story, visuals, music, sound design, and the first-person shooter controls are all pretty average. But the unique gameplay mechanic of being a ghost and possessing humans, animals, and objects to complete your objectives is so incredibly fun and satisfying that it propels this from being an average and forgettable game to an incredibly fun and unique experience that you will likely never forget. There are not too many games out there like Geist that take an established genre and try something new and risky, but that makes Geist one of the coolest games I've played on the GameCube, and I certainly recommend it to any fans of the GameCube. Geist was released as a first-party exclusive on the Nintendo GameCube on August 15th, 2005, and it was developed by InSpace with Nintendo helping, and of course published by Nintendo. Now what is very interesting is that this is the second M-rated game published and partially developed by Nintendo, with the first game being Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem on the GameCube in 2002. Geist has violence, cussing, and hell, even near full-on female nudity, which is really surprising to see in a Nintendo first-party game. Now I was already shocked to see a first-person shooter on the Nintendo GameCube, but a first-person shooter that's mature rated and published by Nintendo and partially developed by Nintendo, it was really shocking to see that, especially at the time. The developer InSpace was founded in 1994 and sadly closed down in 2016, but they developed a ton of games across several different platforms. Some of the notable games they developed besides Geist include Duke Nukem Time to Kill and The Land of the Babes on the PlayStation, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare and Star Wars The Force Unleashed on the Nintendo DS, and the Nintendo DS, Wii, and PS2 versions of Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2. InSpace actually approached Nintendo with Geist because they had heard that Nintendo had been looking for a first-person shooter with a twist, with some unique ideas and gameplay mechanics that set it apart from other first-person shooter games. Geist started out as a game about an invisible man, and then evolved into a ghost game where you possess people, then they added animals, and lastly object possession. One interesting tidbit is that originally object possession was not going to be in Geist. Shigeru Miyamoto had been tasked with overseeing the game during development, and about 6 months into development he suggested to the team at InSpace that they incorporate object possession in some way to make the game more interesting. And that just shows how legendary Miyamoto is. A single sentence from Miyamoto transformed Geist into the game that it is today. Geist's development was pretty interesting, not only because of Nintendo's involvement, but also because the game took several years to develop. It had what you call a long development cycle. Now, I actually found a pretty cool behind the scenes video for Geist on IGN's website that I recommend checking out, and I will leave a link to that in the sources down below. Geist received average reviews with critics, with it having an average critic score of 66 out of 100 out of 43 critic reviews, and it had an average user score of 8.1 out of 10 with 30 user ratings, and these are all on Metacritic.com. So needless to say, the regular consumers that actually bought and played the game enjoyed it. Now sadly, Geist did not sell well at all, with it having sold only around 110,000 units in North America and 150,000 units total worldwide. These are not great sales at all, especially for a Nintendo first-party game and a first-person shooter game, because first-person shooter games were on fire during that generation. It's a shame too, because I feel like if the developers had been able to make a sequel on, say, the Wii for example, it could have been bigger and even better. Currently, Nintendo still owns the Geist IP, but they're not doing anything with it. I would love to see the game get a complete remake with modern features, but sadly, Nintendo will likely never do anything with the IP, and it will probably be forgotten, which is a damn shame. Hell, I would even take a remaster. Now, Geist is a fairly uncommon GameCube game, but as of right now, it's not terribly expensive. At the time of this recording on pricecharting.com, the average loose price is around $14, the average complete price is around $29, and the average new price is around $48. At the time of this recording, I'm seeing current eBay listings at around $38 to $40, and I'm seeing recent sold listings at around $30, and those are for complete copies. Now, this is one game that I suspect at some point will really shoot up in price, especially considering the GameCube is where the game is stuck, and GameCube games are hot right now. So I recommend buying it sooner rather than later if you're interested in this game or collect for the GameCube. Geist is a pretty interesting game that I enjoyed a lot, and it certainly has a fascinating development story. I just hope Nintendo revives the IP one day or turns it over to one of their partner studios. We can hope. Well, there you have it, folks. GameCube Gallery episode number 14 on Geist. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure and hit that like button. Let me know in the comments down below if you've played Geist and what you think about it. Also, let me know in the comments down below what games you would like to see me cover on a future episode of GameCube Gallery. As always, folks, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing so that you can join the RetroWolf family and help us grow to our goal of 2,000 subscribers. And until next time, folks, stay safe out there, keep playing games and having a good time, and I will see you all in the next video. Later. Oh, hey, if you're still here, I wanted to tell you that I started a Discord server, which I will leave a link to in the description down below so that you can join the server. It has a lot of great channels on the server to be able to connect with me and a lot of the other members of the RetroWolf family, which are just fellow gamers, fellow game collectors, fellow retro gamers. Everybody on that server has a love of video games, and if you want to have some great conversations and have some laughs and be able to interact with me a lot better, go join the Discord server so that we can have a chat on various gaming topics. Again, link for that will be in the description down below.